The overwhelming majority of Lapis's hospitable space is within the throes of the open sea, the deep waters, where the very concept of a substrate is a bygone relic of evolutionary past. The deep waters are voids with no obstacles, places where the pelting of exoforum shells, like maritime sandstorms, are one of the only scenarios in which large creatures are touched by anything that isn't immediately preyed on or preys on them. This is the realm of the sea nuts. Some groups have specialized to cycle between the epipelagic and bathypelagic zones alongside the rise and fall of the golden star. Others filter the water unmindfully, ignorant of their star's disposition. A mind-boggling array of nearly identical species exists here. Gradation between groups is only noticeable when arranged and categorized meticulously, revealed through the finest differences among populations. Unfortunately, sea nuts fossilize about as often as our jellyfish. Only the faintest impressions of collapsed paper skin are silhouetted into stones, locked away and recorded for an imaginary future. One among billions may be preserved while countless species have no chance of documentation. Fortunately, our view is an omnipotent one. Most sea nuts are propelled by flitting the combs of their crowns, leading themselves bell first. By dragging their mouths behind them, they're able to maintain an entirely fusiform leading edge. The low drag hydrodynamic shape makes them surprisingly swift in the water. Slight movements of the bell redirect them at speed, with many sea nuts sporting a more elongated bell for improved maneuverability. Not leading with a mouth does have its drawbacks. Most sea nuts rely on tiny food particles becoming trapped in their slime layer. Cilia all along their skin constantly cycles this slime around the body and into the oral cavity and back. Detritus and microscopic prey are helpless in the slime current, while larger exoforams and struggling animalogs are guided by labial tentacles after entering the crown. Torpedonusians have especially muscular bells, which can even undulate to drag them along the substrate in shallow waters. Outgrowths of their labial tentacles, limp tendrils sporting their own slime cycles, are hauled behind them and act as fishing lines. Torpedo nuts of the open sea also prefer catches a little too big to be caught in a slime layer, but they have surpassed casting nets. These sea nuts swim backward, head first. Anguilliform torpedo nuts are creatures belonging to the open sea, only traveling close to shore when chronically disoriented from illness or injury. Thin, defenseless bodies reaching lengths of 10 feet or more in some species aimlessly slither through the blue void. Their limited instincts have no concept of obstacles other than the sky itself. As far as they are concerned, the water surface is the substrate. Any anguilliform torpedo nut disoriented enough to find itself shorebound will surely die. Even rafting vegetation voyaging through their natural habitat is cause for alarm. Their bodies are easily tangled and torn when encountering such complicated and often sharp structures with no clear solution bred into them. Fortunately, the open sea is so barren that such fated meetings rarely occur within their lifetimes. Anguilliform torpedo nuts are, in spite of this, perfectly adapted for their environments. Simple bodies and simple brains give them extremely low metabolisms, compensating for a mind-numbing rarity of prey. While they don't appear to have tendrils in their mouths, they have actually developed them into Velcro-like linings inside of their crowns. To maintain a hydrodynamic shape while swimming mouth first, they've separated each citrus-like sector of their crowns into solid projections, with a thin skin binding them together. Muscles at the base of the crown move each sector in tandem, letting them open and close the mouth like a lens. When food is sensed by smell or touch, it's surrounded and gulped by the mouth, and sealed away for processing and continued swimming. Their favorites are swarms of sea nuts, gathering blooms of plankton. All are captured at once, still engaging in their own predator-prey struggles, until bumping into an unseen barrier and sticking to it. This is the anguilliform torpedo nut's Velcro in action. All captured prey items are soon torn apart by the movement of cilia, incapable of understanding what's happened to them. Named for the placid waving of their 8 tapering fins, anguilliform torpedo nuts are the sea nut attempt at what we may consider fish. Every fin has a neighbor on each side, mirroring it. The pattern manifested clearly demonstrates that the organism grips the water around it, plowing through it as though it were soil. The swimming pattern emerges from simple electric pulses sent along the bell. Even as the bell twists and contorts while changing direction, the fins are kept on pace, only losing their timing as news of the head's change in speed ripples down the body. 8 fins may seem wasteful, but their grip in the water is unchallenged. Boring through liquid hardly disturbs it to begin with, but sudden stops and immediate acceleration can make them entirely invisible to prey. These finned sea nuts start out life more typically proportioned, with a bell only about twice the length of the crown. As they reach maturity, their bodies elongate significantly. While all other organs cram around the natal portion of the bell, their gonads swell through the entire surplus of coelom trailing behind. When their species conditions are met, their bodies are purged of gametes, leaking clouds of spawn from their mouths for days. Many of these creatures will never encounter another member of their own species, but in spite of the open sea, in spite of that void, some specks are fated to collide. Sea baskets journey into the blue emptiness, but they can't stay there forever. Only their sporophytes can. The sporophyte is, as with most lattilomorphs, the more diagnostic half of their life cycle. All sporophytes are born from gametophytes, which spread eggs and sperm. Lattilomorph gametophytes are typically nondescript, flaky growths which grow on rocks, mud, and large-grained sand. What appears to be one species dominating the seafloor is actually a microscopic jungle of the reproductive stages of Lapis's menagerie of floranalogues. Different species gradate alongside changes in the substrate, depth, and temperature. Only as sporophytes can their differences be appreciated. An interesting quirk of Lapis's biosphere is that different species of gametophytes die back and replace each other over the course of the year. In many of these cases, the sporophytes and gametophytes of 2 species replace one another. This intertwining of generations removes competition between the colluders and simultaneously defends their shared niche from being encroached on by other lanolomorphs. As lanolomorphs of the substrate optimize the usage of their respective territories, those who set out to leave the soil as sporophytes struggle to find a foothold as gametophytes. Shedding spores while floating over liminal midwaters works for many populations of sea baskets, but those riding currents over the open sea for years at a time have few, if any, opportunities to sow their gametophytes. Even when the seafloor is within pressure tolerance, much of Lapis's undersea surface is too far down to coalesce enough light for growing gametophytes. Habitable areas are so valiantly defended that settlement of a gametophyte onto a suitable perch is rare enough, but the presence of other compatible gametophytes is rarer still. There is high selective pressure for sea baskets to find a solution to this quandary. Eventually, one population will. This is a Janus sea basket. Where other floating xanthophils dip their proverbial toes into Lapis's vast oceans, Janus sea baskets were born to proliferate deep within this exiled expanse of featureless blue. Free from competition and free from predators, Janus sea baskets have grown large. More surface area for gathering light, denser flesh for resisting the surface's waves, and a greater volume for storing nutrients compound into one of the largest lanolomorphs by weight. A weight which remains neutrally buoyant near the surface thanks to their riveted gas bladders. A lengthened stipe makes room for more blade-shaped leaves, a towering spiral bracing one another to maintain a hoarded cup of light. A hypertrophied and similarly lengthened stone boasts more room for the storage of starches and has a greater surface area for producing hydraulic hooks to grab colony members. The weighted stone also encourages proper orientation in the water, passively preventing capsizing. Sea baskets have dual-sided leaves, an overside dedicated to catching light, and an underside devoted to respiration and nutrient absorption. At the base of each blade, below every beaded string of nematocysts, lies an off-color, spiked bulb. These structures do not serve the Janus sea basket's pursuit of buoyancy, like its other brassen pearls. The mace-like outgrowths are their key to leaving the seafloor behind. These structures are actually the Janus sea basket's gametophytes, fused to the leaves of the sporophyte. With both faces of this species now lying on the same coin, all of its life stages can reside in the open sea. Colonies bathe the water in their male gametes when the moon is in its proper place, taking unrelated gametes into their gametophytes to fuse with their eggs. New sea baskets are born by budding off of the titular gametophytes. Some grow to hook onto their mothers once the bond of flesh is sundered. Still others straighten their hooks and allow themselves to drift free, starting new colonies when the iron moon reaches its place again. Unbound from their mothers and untethered to any substrate or home, these helpless cadets cast out at the whim of the sea are the freest of all xanthophores. For now, they are safe from any and all macrobiological dangers. Deep below the Janus sea baskets, long past the furthest that light can penetrate, is a blackened, inky seal which shrouds much of Lapis's face. While the Piscean Age is marked by the emergence of vision, this novelty holds no weight across much of this planet's abyssal seafloor. Lapis's true surface dips below the venture of light for the majority of its expanse. No xanthophole can persist in this eternal night. Inane pressure from the boundless ocean above shackles all exotheres persisting here to this fathomless depth. Bound to the seafloor by pressures thousands of times greater than at the surface, denizens of the deep toil unseen in their private ecosystems. The deep seafloor is surprisingly habitable. Sequestered from the influence of the golden star, temperatures here are entirely consistent. The phases of day and night go unnoticed, with only the vaguest hints of months passing as surges of failed gametes from sun-kissed territories dust down as marine snow. Much of the abyssal seafloor is nothing but fine sand, with little to find aside from exobacteria. Degrading particles of rot and metabolizing raw materials from marine vents, these exobacteria are harvested by the rare exoworms sifting through the sand. Funganusians gambol lazily, scattering substrate to farm the same exobacterial resources. Their hemocyanin blood is extremely efficient in cold, highly pressurized waters, but their low-yield food source makes them much less energetic than their surface water cousins. Amid the prancing sea nuts, multi-abdominians stand with inspiring dignity. Enormous structures made almost entirely out of water and slime, these ancient beings passively absorb exobacteria and detritus as they always have. Their bodies are so incredibly nutrient-poor that animalogs ignore them entirely. Even for the octanguipeds inhabiting these depths, the energy required to harvest multi-abdominian lobes outweighs the benefit. Octanguipeds are blind. They don't notice the all-encompassing umbra. The lack of xanthopholes here has greatly influenced their evolution, however. This is an accordion octanguiped. A kaleidoscope gradation of these creatures exists between the liminal deserts and the abyss. Our representative species' evolutionary ties to the midwaters are etched into its appearance, counter-shading for a sun it will never see. Its genetic line was so incentivized to camouflage from visual predators that the coloration vestigially lingers on, well after leaving their star behind. Nevertheless, recurved, melanin-enforced spines prickle out of their extendable, segmented legs. While not a particularly crafty array of defenses, it is enough to deter the touch-sensitive finworms who call these depths home. The advanced omnivorous jaws innate to cover crawlers have atrophied in these deep-sea forms. Little more than their radulae remain, lapping up the now standard dish of exobacteria and detritus from sand picked up by their sticky feet. The abyss is a haven for the ancient, with its unchanging ecosystem sporting relics from the scum age, oblivious to the mass extinction and ecological recovery above. Recalling that ancient scum age, deep-sea octanguipeds hardly seem to move, with their strides slowed to a creaking drag. However, when the scent of intact carrion descending to the seafloor is caught by their siphons, they suddenly recall their surface water ancestry and bolt in its direction. With legs like a series of pistons, they retract and explosively extend, bounding across the sand with feral abandon. Being the first to a fallen carcass blown out from the surface would ensure enough nutrient-dense food to glut them for over a year. A large laposaucer or a meaty-eyed finworm make for cornucopias worth fighting for. After scattering suckling finworms from the feast with their spines, deep-sea octanguipeds will lord over the prize, frantically sawing at it with their feet and stuffing each mouth with the precious gift from less humble ecosystems. As more octanguipeds reach the pulpit, battering fights for dominance ensue. Rights to the carcass change hands as earlier visitors stand down, glutted to the gills. Once enough flesh has been stripped that the octanguipeds can hardly manage to process it further, the finworms return to rasp at every last sliver of flesh. Once the subterranean greenworms arrive, little remains of the once bustling arena, apart from an exobacterial stain breaking down even the slime and drool of the banquet's guests. Apart from these brief, violent, and bustling congregations, the deep sea is placid, placated in its uneventful, hidden world. From those humble depths, our perspective buoys back up to the blistering heat of the golden star, beaming onto the life-cradling, rifling waters of Lapis's intertidal shores. This vast, flat territory reaches up to the high tide mark, stained with the rot of life dredged up to the surface from storms, unable to effectively decompose. It sprawls, miles out in some beaches, all of the way to the low tide mark, where the substrate is never exposed to the sharp, dying air. It is here where the creatures of the sea intermingle with those of the cyclic shallows. Some life resists the intertidal zone's waning. We are well familiar with the sea times which desiccate themselves and wait out the dry spells alongside prickles of glaucid conwrawlers, but there are precious few other stragglers. Stagnant pools in craggy landscapes capture many creatures during low tide, notably the intrepid octoroks. However, larger, more oxygen-demanding creatures suffocate themselves before the high tide returns. To finworms and laposaucers, they are deadly natural traps disguised as refugia. To cover crawlers, sheet worms, and a wide menagerie of other tiny creatures, they are sustainable ecospheres filled to the brim with microscopic phototrophs and exoforms, and cradled with lanolomorph bodies both above and below the waterline. Further out to the expansive stretches of sand carved into waves, baking in the dry sun and separating erratic boulders covered in sea dimes, life waits for the sea to wash back over these parched landscapes. Burrowing exoverms and small Araneanusians bury themselves. Further down, the sand is still waterlogged and hospitable, despite the cracking surface. Exoforams, too, have mastered this terrain, scuttling between grains of sand, which are, in turn, little more than the eroded shells of their relatives. The vagrant visitors to the intertidal zone, the ones who must leave before the onset of low tide, are the ones whose daily migrations are abused by those prowling the edges. Guarding the wider oceans are large laposaucers, smart enough to identify the low tide line and flat enough to safely reach it without running ashore. Their soft bodies collapse helplessly out of water, so they are meticulously careful to venture only within suitable depths. Eyed finworms, frantically flopping and flinging themselves over draining water between sand ripples to return to the sea, are easily restrained and eaten by patient laposaucers. These formidable, intelligent predators are rewarded handsomely for their patience in this uninteresting, often fruitless, ambush behavior. However, their unwillingness to risk venturing past the low tide mark even amid high waters leaves a niche unexplored. Eyed finworms have small, calcareous bones riddled throughout their skin. These structures root their muscles, allowing for greater leverage while still maintaining a worm-like ability to contract, extend, and expand. Moreover, it has allowed for the development of surprisingly powerful, laterally opposing pharyngeal jaws. In some lineages, bones of the trunk have complexified into an elaborate pattern of interlocking shapes. Of them, some have fused the bones between the eyes into something approximating a skull to protect the brain. In the species diagrammed, the structural arches of the cephalic fin's twin stoma, also known as the cephalic vent, are fused into the larger skull structure. An elongate, bony branch framing the buccal cavity is, however, a basal structure among the eyed finworms. It greatly strengthens their cheeks' ability to pump water over their gills and to expel it with high pressure from their buccal vents. Somewhat segmented, rib-like bones of their other fins are also standard, approximately sustaining their immense flexibility while also granting multitudes of greater strength and rigidity. Different groups of these finworms will come to fuse different areas of their chainmail-like skeletons, and we will come to discuss each. First, we will detail our skeletal example, a water cow finworm. Home to liminal deserts and intertidal waters, these are the most herbivorous of the finworms, a group mostly consisting of carnivorous-leaning omnivores. Powerful, grinding pharyngeal jaws process even the toughest shreds of lanolomorph scraped off by microscopic teeth on their lower lips. A long, muscular throat rends its meals into paste before entering a bloat of its digestive tract, which we would call a stomach. A valve separates the acid bath from the rest of its gut, squeezing out as many nutrients as it can before expelling waste from a vent before the caudal fin. Other familiar organ structures approximate expected and necessary biological functions. Notably, finworms possess an X-shaped nervous system with a ganglion commanding each half of the cephalic fin alongside its tentacles. A central brain analyzes information from each ganglion and each eye. The eyes, as with many finworms, are hollow structures filled with a dense gel-like mucus to protect against parasites. A slit in the eye's outer surface allows the pinhole to open and close depending on light levels. A medial heart circles chlorocrurin blood through the body in an elongate oval, with a smaller heart controlling blood flow through each gill branch. As a reminder, chlorocrurin blood is green in dilute conditions but light red when concentrated. On the outside of the finworm, tiny pores called neuromasts let them feel disturbances in the water around them, an ancient trait crucial to the survival of their eyeless relatives. Returning to the cephalic fin and mouth parts, some terminology should be clarified to distinguish more derived finworms. Each half of the cephalic fin sports 9 tentacles and frames the upper lip, with the space between them used as a suction cup to grip rocks and leaves while at rest. The axial knob is a rigid structure which finworms use to brace their bodies onto the seafloor. In more basal finworms, this structure is much more prominent and much more important than in the sea cow finworm. The laminae are tough, scale-like growths which the sensitive papillae can retract behind. Now that the basic terminology and anatomy of finworms is established, their diversity can be discussed more freely. Water cow finworms, as stated previously, have fused dermal bones around their eyes and cephalic vents into novel, superficially vertebrate-like skulls. The majority of dermal bones in the trunk still allow the body to change shape, size, and rigidity in a manner not typically attributable among life on Earth. However, it is a remarkably similar convergence to the dermal skeletons of our sea stars. Water cow finworms are large, robust, and plodding creatures. Swimming slowly with gentle flaps of their anterior and caudal fins and tweaking their balance with undulations of their posterior fins, they are almost graceful in their meandering. They regularly rest with their bellies on the substrate, bending their heads harshly down to brace their axial knobs and relieve weight from their ever-pumping buccal cavities, or holding their heads high up for the same result. As with all finworms, and especially the bony varieties, they sink quickly when they inevitably stop swimming. Feeding on lanolomorphs, especially digging parsifals, the finworms avoid overgrazing to ensure the floranalogues have time to recover and the ecosystem remains abundant. These armored, ponderous creatures are particularly fond of rocky crags, since their skeletal structures allow them to slip into and fill any hole their skulls fit into. While our current collection of creatures leaves the water cow finworms looking rather impenetrable, there are potent predators which we have yet to discuss. Visual predators, not so easily fooled by flecked marbling among stones and xanthophylls. The laposaucers guarding the ocean outside of the intertidal zone are no threat to finworms as large as the water cows. Laposaucers are limited to soft, small prey. The dermal bones of finworms weigh them down, threatening their buoyancy if they prey on too many of a substantial size. Large finworms are free to pass by, if not outright avoided in fear of being preyed on themselves. Our next 2 groups of finworms validate that fear. Freely journeying into the intertidal zone following the migratory edge of the sea is the Hotcake finworm. Where water cows fused their brain cases and cephalic vents into a skull, Hotcake finworms fused their brain cases with the trunk between the anterior fins. This vast joining and fusion of dermal bones has resulted in an extremely tough, turtle-like carapace. The cephalic fin and the eyes are not part of this bony union, and so retain a typical worm-like freedom of movement. The first 2 cephalic fin tentacles have become dedicated sensory organs, with the first analyzing what is directly in front of the creature, and the second gently whipping about to monitor its bubble of personal space. The first pair is less sensitive, mostly preventing the finworm from swimming face first into obstacles, but the second, longer pair is extremely sensitive. Even with acutely tuned neuromasts, the immense radius and 360-degree coverage of smell and touch that these tentacles provide proves invaluable to these low-lying critters. They can often be seen gently probing behind and under rocks for prey, a useful method of scanning their surroundings while swimming. The large anterior fins are rooted tightly to the carapace and undulate to drive them at a steady pace. Quick changes in the undulation pattern can reorient and reverse them with ease, great for navigating rocks and crags between banks of sand in the intertidal zone. The posterior fins are nowhere near as articulate and have paired with the small caudal fin. In turn, they act together as a larger tail fluke, while the true caudal fin is angled to help change direction and orientation. The tail is only activated for quick bursts of accelerated movement and cannot be relied on extensively. Unlike the water-cow finworms of sublittoral waters, hotcake finworms are always very close to the surface. Often less than 10 feet under it, they have little reason to remain away from the substrate. Patrolling the shallows, hotcake finworms have a few tricks up their sleeves. Typical prey items for finworms can be rooted for worms, cover crawlers, the like. Ill-swimming prey like basal finworms and sheetworms can be chased down, but more substantial prey is out there. Other finworms, with eyes on the lookout and lateral line organs up and running, visit the intertidal zone for those same rich food sources. With speckled, white bodies, hotcake finworms can rest onto the seafloor and use their anterior and cephalic fins to billow sand up and over themselves, burying all but their faces. Their buccal vents have reoriented, facing forward under their eyes so as to not unbury themselves by breathing. This restructuring has forced their buccal cavities into an M shape, but this does not impact their breathing. With turreted eyes glancing at every movement, they wait for visiting finworms to swim too close. Sensing vibrations in the water does not help other finworms to detect ambushing predators, and blurry vision struggles to find a hungry face in the sand. The hotcake finworm senses its prey from afar with its long pair of second tentacles, anticipating the signal from its own lateral line organ. Once all senses align at a target, the cephalic fin is flipped over the eyes, mouth agape and bristling with pin-like teeth. In the same moment, the fins are all engaged at once to suddenly thrust the mobile snout at the prey item, hooking it and pinning it down to the substrate. Dermal bones under each tentacle have formed protruding spines, with 1 and 2 held back for protection, while 3 through 9 hold tightly on to the slippery prey. Finworms can be difficult to dispatch since their brains are typically in the centers of their bodies. Hotcake finworms take no chances. They walk their mouths along the prey's back until the eyes are located. The prey's brain is swiftly dispatched by the predator's pharyngeal jaws. It takes each hotcake finworm practice to master this maneuver, with gruesome mistakes often being subjected onto their suffering catches. By pitting the prey's tail end under their heavy, bony torsos, they can effectively feel when their prey has been killed, and they are free to eat without risk of escape. While their mercy can be evolutionarily abused by their prey playing dead, it is a tricky behavior to incentivize. Other predators view the dispatch of prey before eating more callously than others. Predators which even the hotcake finworms hide from when forced to border the wider sea at low tide. Hotcake finworms have another close relative prowling the intertidal zone. Unlike the familiar flattened form which lies in ambush, ribbon finworms are pursuit predators. Like their cousins, ribbon finworms have flattened themselves to better navigate shallow water. Taken one step further, their bodies have become serpentine to twist and turn after prey while still maintaining a size advantage. They can fit between rocks and xanthophyll growths with ease, as, unlike our other derived finworms, the only fused parts of their skeletons are their brain cases. The entire rest of the body can consciously expand and contract. This aids them in chasing more traditionally sized and shaped finworms through complex environments in mere inches of water. Simultaneously, this ability protects them during low tide, when forced to seek refuge among the calcareomorphs. Where hotcake finworms hide in plain sight, ribbon finworms cram themselves meekly under rocks and between slabs of reef. Again, like their sister taxon, the ribbon finworms dedicate their first two pairs of tentacles to scent and touch. The innermost pair is somewhat reduced compared to the dominant outer pair, arced out into a T or M shape to helm the creature's sense of navigation. At the base of the union of these antennate tentacles lies a formidable fang. Tentacles 3 through 9 sport their own fangs as well, all formed from dermal bones. A tough enamel coats each projection, leaving off with a pinprick sharpened tip. Rows of needle-like teeth line the lower lip, raking across seized prey. A weak, unspecialized gular jaw is utilized only to assist the movement of food down the throat. Ribbon finworms are the first of their ilk to truly form a raptorial appendage. In sacrifice, the cephalic fin's ability to suction onto surfaces is greatly diminished, albeit hardly missed. The tentacles must be held up and away from a surface to even attempt the behavior without dulling the fangs. While specializing for moving in extremely shallow water, ribbon finworms come programmed with multiple strides. In complex, obstacle-ridden shallows, the body contorts in a serpent-like fashion, while the excessively elongate anterior fins undulate. In deeper waters, this mode of movement includes dips of the head and torso in all directions rather than just side to side, like a ribbon trailing behind the lazy acrobatics of an earth bee. Without obstacles, the body is held stiff and perfectly horizontal, driven only by the sinusoidal waving of the front fins. When engaging in this mode of locomotion, the antennate tentacles are held straight out and perpendicular to the torso, monitoring the water for larger, more pelagic predators. Their final method of locomotion is the fastest, and used only when bursts of speed are wholly necessary, especially when lunging fleeting prey. After chasing with more energy-conscious locomotory patterns, all water is ejected and gushed from the buccal cavities, and breathing is stopped. The entire body converges into a powerful and rapid dorsoventral wave, with the anterior fins rippling in tandem. The body wave is amplified further from the head, leaving the posterior and caudal fins to flip wildly, producing massive thrust and acceleration. This costly maneuver is not sustainable, but is remarkably fast. Because they cannot breathe while performing this motion, they can be easily exhausted in continued pursuit. It often proves more than enough to capture food, though, and invaluable to avoid becoming food themselves during low tide. Even still, journeying through ephemeral intertidal water is a daunting and risky habit for creatures as large as the ribbon finworm. Luckily, they have one final method of locomotion. If they've lingered too long where the seed recedes entirely, they must find a tide pool or die of asphyxiation and desiccation. Collapsing their bodies and recoiling into tide pool havens can only work for so long before they burn through all of their well's oxygen. By slowing their bodily functions and hardly moving, they wait out as long as they can. Some pools are large enough to wait out low tide, but others aren't so blissful. As oxygen wears thin, the ribbon finworm has no choice but to abandon its bunker and seek a new one. Lapis's intense gravity makes this task even more demanding. The ribbon finworm fills its buccal cavities and jettisons its head end out of the water. It awkwardly transitions between the lunging wave-type locomotion carried out with its still waterborne body and an altered version of its open-water, still-bodied gait. By bracing the elongate bones of its anterior fins into the substrate and angling them downward, it holds its stiff torso above the ground. The waving of its fins slowly but surely gains traction on compacted sand, plowing the creature forward. Above water, their eyes offer little aid. Vision is distorted and blurry in this unwelcoming atmosphere. With no way to breathe and rapidly succumbing to exhaustion, death is certain unless a new pool is found quickly. The indifferent sea will either come to wash over excited gulps of breath from a triumphant survivor, or the cold flesh of the maladapted. Lapis's worm age has bled gradually into its Piscean Age. With no mass extinction to delineate the transition, the only tells in the deep future will be the emergence of new clades and the ever-drifting structures of exoforams. Populous species with diagnostic mineralized body parts will also solidify comparative stretches of time. The denticles of gelatopulms, the carapaces of covercrawlers, and even the dermal bones of finworms are prime examples of biochronological fossils. While we have referred to it as the Piscean Age, that is a relative term. While Lapis has no plants and no animals, it does have fish. Where Plantae and Animalia are taxonomic groups tied to life on Earth, fish aren't. While the idea that our tetrapods are fish is rooted in logic, fish are not a taxonomic grouping. Rather, the concept of fish is used to describe a wide swathe of swimming vertebrates. In some cases, invertebrates as well. This is all to say that Lapis's equivalent of fish have yet to be discussed. While the finworms fit many criteria one might imagine, they are so innately tied to the seafloor that they are more comparable to polychaetes or tadpoles of Earth. A more gracious comparison would be to our cuttlefish, but unlike them, finworms are harshly negatively buoyant. Lapis's true fish are swimmers with blood, gills, eyes, and buoyancy control. The overwhelming dominance of gilled creatures in shallow water ecosystems has opened an interesting niche. While blood is often thought of as a devoted system for distributing oxygen, it also distributes nutrients. In order to function, gills need to be in direct contact with water. This little inconvenience has opened a new door for parasites to abuse. Plaguing the gills of Lapis's most derived life forms is an unexpected lineage. This new parasite is no barbworm, not even an exoverm. It's a relic from the distant past, relishing its retribution over the worms after all this time. This parasite is a multi-abdominian. This is a thumbscrew. These minuscule multi-abdominians are distributed through microscopic particles shed from the adult stage, which are billowed out from the exhausts of their hosts. When a particle is unwillingly breathed in or simply contacts the bare gills, it forms a cyst. From this first bladder, a zigzagging spine projects, driving itself through the thin, specialized skin of the gill. Once inside, plumous bladders unfurl into the bloodstream, catching nutrients in the breeze as any multi-abdominian would. As the plume grows, the oldest bladders draw back their liquids, leaving a splintering, desiccated spine which draws backward as the stalk saps it dry. This passive hydraulic action is what screws the barely visible parasite further into its host. As the creatures of Lapis adapt to this inconvenience, the parasite's populations are bottlenecked, effectuating more resistant, more resilient generations. These tiny blights grow and live so fast that even self-clogging the blood vessel to restrain the thumbscrew gives them enough time to drill to the outside and shed new clones, both outside and elsewhere within the bloodstream. When infestations become ravenous enough, barbed debris is cycled and congested throughout the respiratory system. With millions of tiny injuries piling up, the helpless host dies of its wounds and poisons its surroundings by reeking the very vapors of its undoing. Of course, parasitic infections are rather easily dealt with by healthy immune systems. Most of Lapis's killed creatures carry one or two thumbscrews, but their particles are easily snuffed out by the army of amoebic cells employed by the host. The same, unfortunately, cannot be said of larger parasites. Herbivores, which discard enough of their food to keep it alive, can too be considered parasites, wearing down their array of host species until the brink of death, just to await their recovery and harvest again. Because of their ease of abuse, floranalogues are armed with potent defenses to discourage animalogues from eating them in the first place. Lenilomorph's tough, rubbery skin is not only difficult to pierce, but difficult to chemically break down. Forcing their parasites to comply with their standard of digestion and specialize for it helps them greatly. The transition from carnivory to herbivory is an obstacled path, but the transition from herbivory to carnivory is sometimes paved in gold. The conwrawlers are pre-built for destruction. 8 gnashing maws, each equipped with a grating radula, all wielded straight at the surface they find themselves on. With a simple tweak to their behavior, they are drawn to the scent of exhaling animalogues. Gradual degradation and rebuilding of their gut microbiomes allows one group of conwrawlers to persist on flesh and blood alone. This is a parasitic conwrawler. While this form looks wholly ungainly, they're actually inconspicuously interchangeable with their harmless herbivorous cousins. The muscular worm-like projection is typically retracted within the body and shell, with the conwrawler snailing along on 8 feet, as usual. Of course, this isn't without sacrifice. Unlike the octanguipeds, they were unsuccessful in separating their feet and jaws. Parasitic conwrawlers have simply left their jawbones to vestigially creep within the feet, while their actual maws have reduced to salivary pleats. By weeping a chemical concoction, they numb their host before using their powerful radulae and hooked feet to auger themselves into prey. The feet lodge into the initial wound to leverage the protruding oral tube as far as it needs to go to rasp away at the nutritious flesh beneath their distant kin's skin. While they will take from any creature soft enough, finworms and their interlocking dermal armor can prove risky. Parasitic conwrawlers much prefer octanguipeds. Because their carapaces and plastrons restrict their guts, these creatures store their fat in their limbs. This bounty is prized by the parasitic conwrawlers, although generally they will persist off of skin and of blood. The different blood chemistries of Lapis's assemblage of life may seem incompatible, but there is actually little difference to these hemivores. The chlorocruorin of greenworms is too large to fit within specialized cells and is free-floating within the blood. The conwrawlers simply don't eat them, pulling up blood into special hollow spines in their radulae through holes too small for this structure. The hemocyanin of many sea nuts is similarly large, albeit something the grounded conocrawlers cannot access. The fuchsia blood of hemorrhrin is the only protein on Lapis which fits inside of special oxygen transport cells. This is the blood that conocrawlers themselves have, along with every other cover crawler. It is easily metabolized. In the Piscean Age, snail-like movement along a slime trail is long out of style. It is incredibly slow, and traveling any distance is a huge investment. Parasitic conocrawlers either sniff out favored resting places of their hosts and wait for them to return, or wait on the edges of lanolomorph projections for a host to brush into them, like Earth's ticks. The only way this works is if the parasites fast for days to weeks, months even, in colder waters. If there is a way for these creatures to glut themselves more regularly, they will find it. The internal parasitic conocrawlers have done just that. Living within the digestive systems of their hosts, their anatomy has been sanded down in order to fill this niche. Their bodies have shrunk to almost nothing, with simplified organs only capable of eating blood and pre-digested food. Their bodies are free to swell with gametes. Each gut conocrawler is hermaphroditic, producing both sperm and eggs. The eggs are a rich yellow and are cast out in long, sticky strands. Their resemblance to ctenophytes is intentional. Sperm is sprinkled over their own eggs as pollen, dormant and protected by complicated shells. They use their reduced needle-like radulae, now sucking proboscides, to hold themselves within their hosts. Probing their shells out of their host's anus, they release their gametes in steady droves. Pulling themselves back to safety, they recollect further up in the digestive system to gather energy and more gametes. The disc-like remains of their ancestral 8 feet contract and slide upward, only to extend and draw back, hauling the shell somewhat like the radially symmetric equivalent of a worm. A heavily reduced respiratory system still allows the gut conocrawlers to smell, but they are mainly used for one purpose: sniffing out foreign, compatible sperm. The pollen-like sperm and eggs of other gut conocrawlers are eaten by their hosts, assuming they are ctenophytes stuck to whatever surface they landed on. Some eggs make it through the majority of the host's digestive system unharmed, albeit with their casings eroded. Without intervening, the eggs and sperm from the same individual are now free to undergo hermaphroditic parthenogenesis. This is where the genetics of an individual are reshuffled into a new organism, reshuffled from the same deck, but not cloned. If a resident gut conocrawler is present, it can choose whether or not it wants a new roommate. Sniffing out the alluring scent of freshly popped conocrawler pollen and an unfertilized egg, an established individual may use a proboscis to suck the egg dry and to insert the husk into its shell. Here the foreign sperm, dozens gushing from each pollen grain, run amok amid the horde of eggs. When the gut conocrawler returns to the end of its host's digestive system to release more of its spawn, some of the eggs will already be fertilized, with the baby lying dormant until the digestive enzymes of its new host thins its prison, releasing it. The laposaucers are intelligent, visually oriented predators of soft nectin. While most laposaucers are large, if not apex predators in their respective pelagic and neritic environments, Benthic laposaucers do exist. They are much less grandiose than their swimming relatives, but no less intelligent. With ancestors spanning 5 feet or more in diameter, the Revolver laposaucer appears diminutive, mere inches in length. A cryptic, sandy patterning specked over a nearly transparent body infers that this member of a once proud clade hides from its own predators, derived finworms, and even other laposaucers. Eyeless creatures are easily avoided, while clear blood and camouflage protects them from the hungry eyes of more calculated predators. As with all laposaucers, their bodies are soft and frail. The fangs of ribbon finworms are particularly deadly. Escape is difficult for a creature which mainly crawls along on oral tentacles. As a last resort, the Revolver laposaucer can abuse a unique quirk of its anatomy, inverted portions of the crown which form bag-like gills. One for each sector, every bag is lined with tiny villi to filter the water for oxygen. Inhaling deeply and suddenly exhaling offers an energy-costly but highly effective propulsive jet. The movement is unpredictable and trajected by quick, subtle movements of the bell. The propulsion leading in an entirely different direction than where the Revolver laposaucer was just crawling leaves most predators confused and confounded. Even if predators track the movement, an ever-changing silhouette challenges them further. Revolver laposaucers can lie their bells flat against the seafloor, hold them vertically, bloat, shrink, and point it toward or away from the direction they're heading, and everything in between. These creatures, while tiring relatively easily, are incredibly frustrating to hunt. Most predators give up quickly. Revolver laposaucers are more than their evasive strategies, however. Unlike their relatives, they have re-adopted a more basal feeding strategy. In the shallow waters they call home, from calcareomorph reefs to the shallow liminal expanses of barstpools, they search the sand for small worms, exoforms, detritus, microscopic organisms, and exobacteria. Without teeth or jaws, laposaucers are limited to foods they can restrain and swallow whole. Sand is eaten either inadvertently or to process the exobacteria clinging to it. Different pockets of the stomach, as is the case with all other laposaucers, are filled, blocked, then inverted through the mouth to expel inedible waste. While camouflaged, Revolver laposaucers are just as active as their close relatives. They are constantly busy searching through the sand, seeming to be endlessly enchanted by it. Their tentacles crawl and grasp aimlessly, tactically exploring with everlasting vigor. Like the pelagic laposaucers, the ocular nerve ring has become the main persona, rather than the stomach-directed nerve cluster at the apex of the bell. Each brain-like structure communes with the other. However, derived laposaucers of the Piscean Age are much more regal and purposeful due to the predomination of the mind of the mouth over that of the stomach. Derived laposaucers are calculated creatures of observation, Revolver laposaucers even more so. Each eye is tied to a tentacle which moves and responds on its own accord, taking visual, chemical, and physical information into account. While Revolver laposaucers seem strikingly similar to our earthly octopuses, in niche and in behavior they are much more similar to our shrimp. With 8 glossy, spider-like lensed eyes on the lookout, each able to slightly pivot their retina, they are incredibly observant and cautious creatures. Lapis's most intelligent species is only 3 inches tall. Lapis's most numerous creature, on the other hand, has been diversifying. The common octanguiped is an adaptable, resilient force. Its carcinized form is perfectly generalized. The octanguiped build is ripe for iteration and vying for adaptation. This is the royal tyrant octanguiped. Identifiable by its pitch and mauve palette and legs striated with beige patchworks, this octanguiped occupies Lapis's reef and liminal parseful environments. It coincides with many close relatives, narrowly scraping out a niche with its rather impressive size and selective feeding habits. With a much greater leg span than their direct ancestors, they can travel great distances with ease while keeping their plastrons high above rocky obstacles. Each limb is highly motile and is capable of both great strength and precise dexterity. The standard octanguiped foot figuration is on full display, with a muscular, lunate foot lined with rows of sharp hooks and scales. An opposable claw projects from each apex of the crescent. A third point spurs out from the heel tagma, fused from multiple leg segments. This three-pointed pincer is invaluable for grasping both soft and hard-bodied prey, animalog and floranalog alike. Basal cover crawlers are leveraged and pried with the 3 points and dropped into the crushing maws, while unlucky finworms are impaled and exhausted before processing. The same podal tools saw at and cut off pieces of xanthopholes. As the royal tyrant walks, its limbs passively pluck floranalog clippings and pass them to its mouths. Floranalogs require significant processing time, from mastication to radulation, but 8 mouths leave octanguipeds well prepared for the time commitment. They are seldom seen without toying around something in at least one of their mouths. Other octanguipeds are less free-form with their harvesting. Stopping to smell and feel the identity and quality of food is a waste of time to the royal tyrants. Unlike their plebeian contemporaries, royal tyrants can see. Looking closer, we can see that each sector of the bony plastron is crowned with 3 eyes peering beneath the siphon. Lying between 2 coccyx, these ocelli are used to observe and supervise the approach and orientation of food being passed to the correlating mouth. While these eyes do gaze into the horizon, their vision quickly deteriorates into blurry areas of light and dark from far away. Their triangulated focus is fixed directly in front of each mouth, and they see little more than movement. That being said, they do possess another set of eyes. A tiny cluster of ommatidia perches atop the center point of each leg. These eyes are not just built for light sensitivity, they are designed to discern images. Ocelli are fine for manipulating food, but gaining a clear image of predatory finworms and other, more ferocious predators coming from above is incredibly important in this Piscean Age. The octanguipeds are about to become an incredibly successful group. Understanding their anatomy will be of great use moving forward. Taking a look inside, we can see that octanguiped bodies can be split into 2 main bones, the carapace and the plastron. A tough living layer encompasses this shell, which in most species resembles a rubbery casing, and in others a thin, cuticle-like structure. This layer protects the calcareous shell while also allowing it to grow and be pigmented. Unlike many shelled creatures of Earth, octanguipeds do not molt. Their bones grow in the same way ours do, and their skins shed continuously as particles. Unlike us, their muscles attach to the insides of their bones. Apodemes, inward flanges, root the strongest muscles. The solid structures of octanguipeds are woven with calcium carbonate, chitin, and collagen, with the main body and metatarsus being the only solid components. The leg structures and their sclerites are more comparable to our cartilage. Hemerythrin blood, fuchsia when oxygenated and colorless when deoxygenated, flows through the spleen ring, which filters the blood. Parts along the spleen ring pump it counterclockwise around the gill ring and the rest of the body. A membranous hollow torus encompassing the gill ring holds water cycled through the octanguiped's 8 siphons. In the center of the body, a winding hindgut trails to the anus atop the plastron from a large central stomach. Each mouth wields its own crop, but only one mouth sprouts a gonad. During mating, octanguipeds must mutually reveal which one of their mouths is reproductive. Locking these mouths, they billow gametes at one another in a feisty and amorous display. When finished, their kiss drops a pile of fertilized eggs. Other organs are strewn about the body cavity asymmetrically. This may seem odd, but even the human body, as symmetric as it seems, contains a slew of paired and unpaired organs, symmetric and otherwise. Above the coelom and embedded within stiffened fleshy structures lies the nerve star. A ganglion for each leg wires out to an ocular ganglion responsible for that leg's compound eye to sanction quicker decision-making. Information is relayed to the brain itself, snugly draped underneath the nerve star. This is the main control center for the octanguiped, where conscious decisions and movements are made. With each leg functionally controlling itself, octanguipeds can greatly smooth over complicated tasks like walking over uneven terrain on 8 serpentine legs, all while foraging, eating, and observing the environment. Observation is especially important as the enclosed shells of octanguipeds limit the space inside of their torsos. To enable their stomachs to gorge and expand when necessary, octanguipeds store their energy as fat inside of their legs. Hungry predators are quick to develop a taste for octanguiped limbs. From similar stock, another line of octanguipeds traverses the meadows dotting liminal deserts and the groves of parsefoles clinging to reefs. This tiny octanguiped is a lemon drop, a scansorial parsefole specialist. Less than an inch tall, these spindly creatures are not adapted for walking, but for climbing. Lanky tarsi and metatarsi let them crimp around the thin-bladed leaves of parsefoles. Each metatarsus is lined with comb-like spines to aid in grip and stability. Functionally weightless, even under Lapis's crushing gravity, lemon drops hover gently as their ganglion-directed, thread-like limbs carry them up and through Lapis's answer to seagrass. A somewhat transparent body allows a wide range of yellows to shine through them, perfectly matching the color of any leaf. Unable to see color upon losing their compound eyes, this skill goes unnoticed to them. A scansorial lifestyle disincentivized their compound eyes, and they have since disappeared. While eyes on the legs were very useful for octanguipeds walking along the mostly flat seafloor, constantly reorienting the body and waving the legs made them a hindrance. Instead, the simple eyes of the plastron have become increasingly complex. While their vision remains poor, they can see the difference between climbing surfaces and the background, as well as focus in on planktonic prey to be snatched with a foot. They do this by tugging at the internal structures of their eyes, like reorienting the telescope inside an observatory. The scansorial parsefole octanguipeds mainly feed on the parsefoles themselves, though. Taking occasional sawing bites to remove a sliver of leaf, they radulate at it in closed mouths to fill their corresponding crops. With wobbly movements, these tiny octanguipeds exist to little notice from larger creatures. At their most conspicuous, these octanguipeds can be seen using their anal tubes, which emerge to prevent their own poop from falling over their eyes and tangling in their legs, to sword fight for territory. While complex life on Lapis started out quite familiar to the stage our own planet once set, it is quickly diverging. Lapis is, if anything, an example of just how different life can become, even from the same seeds. Few of its children exemplify this more than what we will call the Wormhole assassin. This particularly nightmarish creature boasts a vivid magenta trunk sprouting from a toothy disc, dragging behind a speckled, ovoid shell. A mouthless, armored head bristles with articulated spines and mounts its crowning jewel, a vermilion compound eye. This collection of unique features at first leaves its taxonomic relations dubious, but upon closer inspection, the wormhole assassin is a conwrawler. Specifically, it is a lineage of gut conwrawlers which has regained independence. This freedom is only found in the eyed adult form, however, as young are still reared within the forgiving vessels of their hosts. Upon reaching the adult stage of life, a compound eye forms atop the armored plastron. Size at host abandonment varies on species, both of the host and of the assassin. In our example species, it emerges from a common octanguiped's anal pore at about an inch long. Shell first, it protrudes from its unwilling mother and relaxes its hypodermic proboscides, allowing itself to slip out. After a few involuntary spasms from the sudden change in environment which would shock and kill its ancestors, the assassin is now free. Its compound eye, composed not of skin, but of crystal in the form of calcite, describes its world with light for the very first time. Once the awe settles in its barely cognizant brain, the awed worm rolls off of its octanguiped and burrows, eye first, into the sand. Tiny glass-like spines protrude from its segmented trunk. While they once helped it move through its host's intestines, they now grip the substrate masterfully. Its tooth-ribbed skirt shrouds its sensitive olfactory tentacles and its cumbersome shell from the coarse sand. While reproductively viable, the newly emerged assassin has hardly approached maximum size. It spends the rest of its days seizing blood from other worms of the substrate and lying in wait with its facial star gazing blankly above the sand. In this position, it's ready to launch out and prick any swimming creature that gets too close. Occasionally, prey is caught so off guard by the assassin's pain-dulling saliva that they simply allow the creature to glut its vampiric fill. Wormhole assassins live in their adult stage for dozens of years, never stopping their growth. Assassins truly earn their names as they approach 3 feet in length, spearing their hosts more than anything. Dead blood tastes the same as long as they're quick about it. In spite of inane size differences between partners being commonplace, wormhole assassins can still breed easily. Where their ancestors were hermaphroditic, these conwrawlers go about hermaphroditism in an interesting way. They are protandrous, starting out only producing male gametes and changing to female gametes once they reach more substantial sizes. With only the largest and most successful assassins expressing themselves as female, the population as a whole benefits from the likelihood of fitter genes. At the same time, so few assassins actually reach this size that utilizing greenhorns as male stock ensures continued genetic diversity, a struggle once faced by their ancestors. Unlike most sexually reproductive creatures, which are born with a fixed number of eggs, protandrous organisms are able to create eggs upon reaching their second puberty. Large females can carry and release tens of thousands of eggs at a time, corroborating the likelihood that some may be eaten by a compatible host. Thank you so much for watching the Piscean Age Part 2. I am Candy Eggs, creator of the LAPIS Exobiology project. Please stay tuned for Part 3, our final note on the Piscean Age. Part 3 will be quite a bit shorter than our previous entries, but it details the grandest creatures Lapis has yet known. Only one group can take the crown of the planet's fish analogs. Lapis's true fish have been evolving alongside our other charismatic creatures for millions of years. But only then will they be revealed.